The door to the roadside bar creaked open as a small figure stepped inside, letting in a beam of fading sunlight that sliced through the smoky air. The laughter stopped for just a second, enough for every pair of rough, tattooed eyes to turn toward her. She couldn't have been more than 16, maybe 17, wearing a worn-out leather jacket far too big for her frame. Her sneakers were muddy, her jeans torn, and her hair tied back in a messy ponytail. She hesitated, clutching the edges of her jacket like armor as the eyes around her filled with confusion, curiosity, and soon, laughter. It wasn't cruel at first, more the kind of disbelief that ripples through a crowd when something seems out of place. But then the laughter deepened, a few hoots echoing across the room. The Iron Wolves, one of the most feared biker clubs in the county, had never seen anyone like her walk in alone. A teenage girl, standing among grizzled men who rode steel monsters and lived by rules older than she was. The biggest of them, Tank, leaned back and barked a laugh. "What's this, a lost Girl Scout?" The room erupted again, bottles clinking, boots stomping. But the girl didn't move. She stood there, breathing slow, until the noise started to die down, and that's when they noticed the patch on the back of her jacket. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of silent courage, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Corner. Your support helps us spread stories that remind the world there's still good left in it. The patch wasn't ordinary. It was old, its colors faded, but the words were clear: Iron Wolves, founding member. A hush fell over the room. The men who had just been laughing suddenly straightened up, glancing at each other in disbelief. That patch wasn't something anyone could just buy. It belonged to legends, to the original riders who had built the club decades ago, long before most of these men had even joined. The girl turned slowly, meeting their eyes. Her voice trembled, but she didn't hide behind it. "This jacket belonged to my dad," she said softly. "Eli Rivers." A ripple of silence moved through the room like a cold wind. That name, Eli Rivers, was carved into the memory of every man sitting there. He had been one of the Iron Wolves' best riders, a leader, and a man who never backed down from a fight, or from doing what was right. He died years ago in an accident on Route 66, saving a family trapped in a burning car. None of them had seen his daughter since the funeral. And now, there she was, standing before them in his jacket. Her name was Mira. And she wasn't there to reminisce. She had come for help. Her mother's health was failing, the bills piling up, and no one in town seemed willing to lend a hand. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted quietly. "Mom always said Dad's brothers would never let us fall." Her words hit like thunder. Around her, the laughter had turned to shame. These men, big, tough, loud, were suddenly quiet, their faces softening as the past came flooding back. Eli had been one of them, and they'd promised to look after his family. But promises fade when years pass, and the world keeps moving. Now his daughter stood before them, carrying both his memory and his patch. Tank, the same man who had laughed the loudest, stood up slowly. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Kid, you shouldn't have had to come here alone." He took off his cap, rubbing his hands over his face. Around the room, the bikers exchanged glances, silent nods that meant something unspoken had been decided. That night, Mira rode home in a convoy of engines and thunder. The Iron Wolves had rallied like the old days, their headlights carving through the dark roads. They didn't just help her fix her home, they rebuilt it. The next morning, neighbors watched in awe as a dozen bikers painted walls, repaired fences, and carried groceries. For the first time in years, Myra's mother smiled. But it wasn't just about repairs. Something inside the club had changed. Mira became a quiet symbol of what they'd lost, and what they'd found again. The old loyalty that had been buried under years of pride came roaring back. They started charity rides, delivering food to struggling families, raising funds for veterans, and visiting kids in hospitals, always wearing their patches proudly, always remembering why they began. And at every ride, right at the front, was Mira, riding her father's old bike, restored by the same men who once thought they had nothing left to fight for. The sight of her, young, determined, carrying her father's name, gave them purpose again. People in town began calling her the Little Wolf. Months later, during the annual Iron Wolves gathering, Tank handed Mira something wrapped in cloth. Inside was a new patch, custom made. It read, "Legacy Rider." below it, in smaller letters, daughter of Eli Rivers. As the men watched her sew it beside her father's original patch, not a single eye stayed dry. She looked up at them and smiled faintly. Dad used to say the patch doesn't make you strong, it reminds you who you ride for. The words echoed in the silent hall. And in that moment, every man in that room understood, it wasn't just leather or thread that held their brotherhood together. It was love, loyalty, and the kind of courage that doesn't need to roar to be heard. From that day forward, wherever the Iron Wolves rode, people noticed the young girl among them, the one whose jacket told a story louder than any engine. She wasn't just carrying her father's legacy. She was writing her own. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Every click helps us share more real stories of love, redemption, and humanity with the world. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what does loyalty mean to you? Have you ever met someone whose quiet strength inspired you?